Now when it comes to public speaking, one of the names that stands superordinate throughout history is Cicero. Cicero was an excellent speaker, probably rivaled only by Julius Caesar himself. Now Cicero drops us some tips on how to be a good public speaker from all those years ago. Now first you must understand the context in which Cicero honed his craft. He was a Roman orator, which meant that he would often have to go and use his talents in the public courts. Now the way these courts worked is that somebody would be charged with a crime, and they would have to do a Judge Judy sort of situation, where somebody would go up and passionately represent them, for example like Cicero. But the audience would be the people that they would have to persuade, and around the court there would be all these Roman public. And this court would happen outside in the middle of the forum. So imagine you're walking down the street and there's some guy standing there getting tried for doing something wrong. So this is the practical context in which he had to use his skills. And so this is why you don't get what you expect with Cicero. You would probably imagine, because he's some old boy, you know, a sophisticated Roman, that he would tell you to read the dictionary and use the big words and all this fancy stuff. But instead, he comes across a little bit like some type of pickup artist. He's saying to you, you must subvert the rational mind and appeal to the emotions of the person you're trying to seduce. Cicero tells you that if you want to win these court debates and save your client's life, you shouldn't get caught up addressing arguments. If some guy throws some logical, rational complaint your direction, just deflect that, ignore that, and instead attack the character of the person you're opposing. Call them ugly, make fun of their nose, criticize their physiognomy, call them untrustworthy, slander them in some way. And Cicero goes on to tell us that in order to enhance this effect, make sure you deliver your ideas very well. When you're speaking, use the power of your voice to rile people up. If you're making an intense point, make sure the cadence of your voice picks up and you become more energetic. You pass on that emotion to the people surrounding you. Use your hands. These guys are all Italians after all. Gesticulate. Make sure your hands are shooting through the air, commanding what you're commanding. And if you are to go down the path of actually trying to make a point, make sure you use props. People need to see if they want to believe. Now the best example of this is a bit brutal, because it probably comes from the moment where Cicero's death warrant was signed. You see, Cicero was a great rival of Julius Caesar. And after Julius Caesar had been stabbed, there was this big chaos in Rome. A lot of people were confused as to what exactly had happened. The air was tense. Now Mark Antony, Caesar's main general, went up into the forum and started to speak to the people. His intention was to rouse up the people and make them realize that their representative, their reformer, Caesar, had just been murdered by these conspiring rats in the Senate. Mark Antony stood up and he pulled out an item of clothing. It was the toga that Caesar was wearing, and it was covered in cuts and blood. And he began to say to the people, those cowards in the Senate murdered your man. And look, here is the toga, here is his clothes, and here is his blood. What are you going to do about this? And this set off a riot and drove Rome into civil war, during which Cicero was executed. Well, at least we know he was right about how to do a good speech.